The question is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I too commend this bill to the House on behalf of the Labour opposition and agree with the Minister that this is a very important day in the fight against tobacco and the use of tobacco and its impact on the health of New Zealanders. So we join with the Minister in congratulating this House on reaching the third reading and the final passage of this long-awaited bill. The Minister has set out what this bill is about. It's about to give effect to a decision that was made on the 18th of February 2013 to introduce plain packaging regime for tobacco products in New Zealand. In fact, it was in a speech that the the Associate Minister Tariana Turia made on the 17th of December when she had her first reading on this particular bill. And I thought it was worthwhile going back and looking at Tariana Turia's speech because she has been and was a very, very strong advocate to reduce tobacco consumption in New Zealand. She was when she was in the Labour cabinet and worked closely with myself and with Stevie Chadwick to have tobacco control and a number of measures. She continued when she came into coalition with the current government. And what she said on the 17th of December 2013 is, I look forward to taking the legislation through Parliament, its parliamentary stages in 2014. This will include the Select Committee phase and the opportunity for people to make submissions on the bill. She went on to say that we are pushing forward with this legislation without delay because we are convinced that plain packaging is an important step and it will stack up against our WTO obligations. I've quoted those words from Dame Tariana Turia's speech on the introduction of this bill. And it was her dream that we would have passed this before the 2014 election, and certainly Kevin Hagan, myself and Barbara, we did our best to try and get it through before the election of 2014. We sat on those submissions, particularly memorable were in Auckland, where we had an overwhelming number of people, the majority except for the tobacco companies, who came and said we need to pass this legislation. So, Minister, if I'm going to make a criticism at all, and you know it has to be made, it is the delay in passing this bill. And it does need to be made because although the member opposite, Mr Bridges, Mr 10 Bridges, although he says we don't need to make the point, it does overlook, Minister, how many people's lives could have been saved by more measures to reduce consumption of tobacco. Now that's something I know from the Health Select Committee is very important to members on both sides of the House, an extremely good Select Committee. I have to say at this point, and perhaps the only time I'll be able to say it, we are going to miss Kevin Haig. He has been an amazing member of the Health Select Committee and Kevin, I have to say, I was looking forward to, in government, having you as my associate in health. You would have made a fine health associate health minister. But seriously, Kevin's influence and impact on health policy in New Zealand has been huge. He brought with it a very down-to-earth, can-do approach to health. And one of the issues he was promoting along with the Health Committee has been this particular legislation. And so my disappointment, Minister, it's not this minister's fault. I'm going to give that to him because he only got the job late in the piece. He probably wondered how the hell he got it, actually, but he got it late, and we are wondering. That's true. But he has been hamstrung not by his own desires, but the desires of his cabinet, and this is where the Cabinet did not show the internal fortitude that was needed to get this bill through in a timely manner. Because unlike Tariana, who said that we are convinced plain packaging will stack up against our WTO obligations. She said that, she believed that as a minister. She came up against the Cabinet, led by Mr Key and Mr McCulley and Mr Joyce, who would not allow us to pass this bill just in case the Australians were found to be in breach of WTO regulations. You know, I sometimes have a dig at the Australians, even though my grandchildren are now Australian, but I have to say that I felt rather miffed that the Australians beat us in a health policy, because we have led them for generations. But they've followed much of what New Zealand does, because we're a small, nimble nation that is able to do things as a nationwide service. And we don't have to worry about states and federal government and some funding for hospitals and some funding for primary care, some funding for elder care in different jurisdictions. We could go ahead and put together the sort of health policy we want to implement. And they've admired us. And when I went to those ministerial councils, they were a little jealous that we were able to do so much because we were a small, nimble country. But we were beaten by the Australians in the passage of this bill, and you know, they said we couldn't give a damn what the WTO thinks. We believe that the health of our Australians are more important than what some tobacco company might think. And so they went ahead and they passed the legislation. Well, I have to say, don't worry, Minister, don't take it personally. Yes, whenever you're in a third reading, you rehearse what's gone before, you say what's happened, and this is what has happened. Now, Minister, your name will be on a piece of legislation, and there's not going to be many members opposite who will ever have their names on a piece of legislation, and it will go down in history as a very important tool that was put in place to meet our obligations that we signed up to many years ago under the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. So it is an important day, but it has to be said that when we come to the next measures to improve, to reduce tobacco consumption, let us not wait to see what some other country does. Let us be the first movers. The first movers, not the slow second or third or fourth movers. And Minister, I know you've got a few other things up your sleeve to try and reduce tobacco consumption, because the Minister has told me in written questions he is interested in stopping smoking in cars with children in it. And I would have thought that will be the next cab off the rank from the Minister. Legislation. Oh, well, the other one, Minister, that I hope that you're looking at is stopping duty-free cigarettes. Now, that's been put up as a proposal. Why do we allow people to bring in duty-free cigarettes? There's no gain for New Zealand in that, but for cheap fags. And we're arguing that they're not good for your health. So there's a number of measures. I'm sure you've got some of them there, Minister, and you're going to share them with us over the next year as you run out of time to hold this portfolio. So good, well done. Well done to this Parliament that we are passing this bill today. It is not the panacea, it is one of the measures. And it is a measure that is going to ensure that regulations can be put in place that will set out the detailed requirements for design and the physical appearance of any packaging used or intended to be used with tobacco products. The Minister has shown us, and Minister, you might want to hold that up again for people who didn't see, the kind of plain packaging or standardised packaging we're going to have. And for those who are listening, I have to tell them it ain't plain. It might be standardised, but it's not plain. It is graphic in the photographs that will be on tobacco and cigarette packets, showing what can happen to people who smoke. And in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate, as I've said, the passage of this bill, but let us not rest here, because we are now being told that unless we take some more measures, that lofty goal of smoke-free 2025 will not be achieved. And already we are falling behind meeting that target in 2025. Now, not said by me, but said by those who are monitoring it. Minister, we are falling behind. We will not be smoke-free 2025. More measures like this will be needed.
I call Simon O'Connor.